Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 1153 of Screw the Commute podcast. And if you hear any little yipping in the background, little Minnie is wanting to go out, but I got to finish this podcast. So today is 11:53, and it's going to be something totally different than I usually do, and it's called What I Learned from Flying. Some of you know I was a freelance charter pilot many, many moons ago, you know, when you had to go out in front of the plane and push the propeller down, get it to go. Well, not quite that far away, but I learned a lot of lessons, and I'm going to... They kind of relate to business. And so I'm going to relate things I learned in flying to business in this episode. Hope you didn't miss episode 1152. That was publicity. And I want you to listen to screwthecommute.com/publicity. It was an hour long with myself and the celebrity image coach, Starley Murray. And she has a big event coming up, but we gave you a lot of tips on publicity and how it can be valuable to you, and the mistakes that even experienced people like myself were making when approaching the media. And I built my whole career on media marketing when I first started. So I was humbled when I met Starley and learned from her. Anytime you want to get to a back episode, you go to screwthecommute.com/ and in the episode number. 1152 was publicity, and then also screwthecommute.com/publicity would be the whole hour of Starley and I. Okay, let's see. Pick up a copy of my automation ebook. I'm just so close to getting it out. It's in the proofreading stage, the new version, 4.0, but don't hold back from grabbing 3.0 because 4.0 just adds to 3.0. So you can go to screwthecommute.com/automate free. And also, I've got a podcasting masterclass for you. Yeah, the first half of it is all about being the greatest guest the host has ever seen, what you have to do that. And then the second half is all the cool things you can do if you have your own podcast. And it got me invited to the White House. That's just one of the things. So check that out at screwthecommute.com/pod, P-O-D. That'll lead you to YouTube where you can watch that masterclass. Take a lot of notes. You really want to take some notes on that one. Okay, let's talk about what I learned from flying. So I hold commercial, multi-engine, instrument, Part 135, which is a higher level commercial. And that's all old, but you still maintain those ratings. I haven't flown that stuff for a while. But I do have also recently a commercial drone rating. So I hold a lot of ratings up in the sky, and I've had a lot of time up in that airplane and flying around, flying people around and doing all kinds of stuff. So I learned some things along the way, and they're in no particular order here, but it's just from my past and how I've used some of these things in business now that I think about it. So like I said, no particular order here, but first one is small, immediate corrections. See, when you first start flying, let's say you get off course to the right, and you should be over to the left. So when you're beginning, you say, oh my God, I'm off course to the right. And then you turn the wheel and you hit the rudders and you go real sharp to the left to get back on the course. Well, remember, you're in the air. You don't have wheels on the ground here. So what happens is you shoot clear across your course, and then you say, oh my God, the course is now, I'm on the left and it's to the right. I got to go back. And then you turn real hard and you go back the other way. Right? And so you zigzag, and it takes you like 3 times as long to get to your destination because that's your experience. You don't have the experience. So it was drummed into my head when I was first learning to make small, immediate corrections. And that's much more efficient, and it'll get you to your destination way faster than giant corrections after things have already gone down the tubes. Okay. So when you see something is wrong in your business, small correction can usually fix it up. But if you let it go and fester, then you got to make giant corrections and things are going, south on you. See, so small, immediate corrections. Okay. Next thing is flight planning. And when we would plan to do what they call cross country, you're going from one airport to some other airport. You're not just practicing at your own airport. Well, you have to plan the flight, and you plan for, hey, if something goes wrong, where's the alternate airports along the way so that I can land if something goes wrong? And I got to tell you, things can go really, really bad, really fast in the flying and in business. Okay. So you got to be ready for that. So I would have to do flight plans and see along the route, what airports could I land at if I had engine trouble, or if I couldn't get to an airport, what was the terrain I was flying over? How far could the plane glide if the engine went out, so that I could safely land it in a field or something like that? So that was planning. So you got to do that in your business too. You got to do a lot of what ifs. So I'm going to roll out this new product. Well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? And what if something comes out on ChatGPT that makes my product obsolete and I put all this work into it? See, so you got to plan for things because they can go bad really fast, and it's not, in an airplane, it could kill you. Usually it's not going to kill you in your business, but it might feel like it sometimes when things go really bad. So you got to plan for contingencies. That's flight planning. Okay, checklists. Oh my God, I would not be talking to you if I hadn't had some great, great training on twin engine aircrafts when one engine goes out. However, and I had an engine out on takeoff up in Pittsburgh, almost crashed and burned on the Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers practice field. It was near the airport I flew out of. And I'll tell you what happened. I was coming out of Corning, New York, with 1,000 pounds of glass beads on my plane. All right. And I don't know what people do with them, but I had 1,000 pounds of glass beads. Another thing I used to fly out of New York, this'll crack you up. Goldfish. You know how heavy goldfish are with, all in water in the back of your plane? They were called feeder goldfish, and I flew them out of New York. So I had a lot of stuff on the plane. But anyway, I'm flying back to Pittsburgh, and I stopped at a place, I forget the name of the city, but I stopped right before my home base, and they had a restaurant called the Blue Angel. So I stopped for lunch. The goldfish didn't mind, and neither did the glass beads. All right. So I go in and have lunch, and I come back out, and it's only a 10-minute short hop to my home base airport. Rostraver was the name of it. And so I jump in the plane, fire it up, and I go down and take off. And I shouldn't say take off, because as I'm rolling down the runway and getting to my, what they call the accelerate stop distance, this is like the point of no return on the runway. And so I lose an engine. And the old saying in the pilot world is, when you have a twin engine aircraft, I mean, we're not talking about airliners here, that if one engine goes out, the other engine just flies you to the point of the crash. Okay. So you gotta, when you lose an engine in a twin engine aircraft, on one on each wing, the one that quit turns out like a giant piece of plywood up there, and it violently turns the plane and can make you crash, really quick. So you have procedures that you have to do, and I was very good at it, and I saved the day, and I declared an emergency. I got and the things will barely fly on one engine. They will, but barely, especially if you got goldfish on there. And so I get it around, and I get down and I land, and there's fire trucks waiting for me. And I mean, this is a big deal. All right. Well, what happened? I ran out of gas on the right, on the right full. I'm laughing now, but this is serious stuff, man. I ran out of gas because I didn't go through my checklist for that short 10-minute hop to Rostraver Airport. And had I gone through my checklist, I would have checked the fuel. Actually, you look in the tank to see the fuel, and I would have seen, holy crap, something's wrong. It was a lot of these older planes, have some quirks with them. I'm going to talk about older stuff in a minute, but I would have seen there was not enough fuel in that tank to get home, and I would have gotten fuel and went my 10 minutes to get home. So checklists. And how you relate this? Well, I do webinars, right? Or I haven't done a lot lately, but I used to do tons of them. And invariably, inevitably, I don't know which word is right there, I would get a live webinar going and then say, man, I forgot to get this graphic I wanted, or I forgot how you do this certain function in the webinar software. And so I quit, when that happened enough times. Now, luckily the people didn't know, but I knew that I had messed up. And so I started having a checklist. So if I do a webinar now, I go through this checklist of all the things I got to do to get that thing right. Even there, I have a checklist on live speaking engagements. What am I going to do? Do I need to check that my materials have been sent to the hotel? And all of these little things that, when you get really busy, you forget. So checklist, very important. Okay. Next thing, you got to realize that you are the pilot in command of your business. Now, if you're in a gigantic business and you're just some cog, you're probably not listening to this thing, but, you're the pilot in command. You have to come to terms with that nobody's going to save you. Nobody is going to come, like with me working all weekend. I don't expect the employees to work all weekend. They got families and they're doing their thing. I'm the pilot in command. I have to do whatever needs done, right? Yeah, you can pay people to work extra shifts and stuff, but then that's a lot of extra payroll and this, that. But no matter who you hire, how many people you have, you are the bottom line. You are the pilot in command. See, the pilot in command that's the term we use for the person who's responsible. So there could be two pilots flying somewhere, but each one of us knows, okay, who is the pilot in command of this aircraft? And we talk about it and say, okay, you're pilot in command, PIC. Or you take it, I'm going to take a nap. You're the pilot in command. Okay. And I've done that before. It was 40 hours in the air one time with me and two other guys taking shifts, because we had a really critical thing we had to do. So you have to come to terms. You're the bottom line on things. And if you're in the wrong business, if you can't come to terms with that, if you always want to blame somebody else and put everything else on everybody else, it just doesn't work that way. You're the pilot in command. Okay, this sounds kind of goofy. You got to know which way the wind is blowing. All right. If I'm flying from east to west, if I'm flying to Los Angeles, or I flew frequently back from Wichita, Kansas, I'll tell you about in a minute. It can take way longer if you're flying into the wind as opposed to with the wind in your tail. Or if the wind is crossways, then it blows you off course and you got to do stuff. See? So I'm thinking that applies to business, and that's like trends. What are the trends of your business? Which way is the wind blowing in your business? Can you imagine a big factory that duplicated CDs and DVDs where they're at now, right? So the faster you can watch for which way the wind is blowing in your business, the earlier you can make corrections. Remember those small immediate corrections? Well, if you wait too long, you're going to make those giant corrections, and it might be too late. See? So you got to see which way the wind is blowing. Now, some things can be out of your control, and in that case, I'm talking about weather. You know, I'm not talking about big airliners that can really stand lots of thunderstorms and big stuff like that. I'm talking about mid-size aircraft, and small aircraft, compared to big airliners. And the quote is, in the flying world, is it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air rather than being in the air wishing you were on the ground. Okay, because I've been through some bad weather in these things, and it's not fun. And Mark Twain has a quote, everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. I think they are now trying to seed the clouds and stuff. But anyway, some things are out of your control, and you have to come to terms with that. I know it happened to me when I had the nightclub. The drinking, I had a nightclub in a college town, second biggest nightclub in the whole state, and the drinking age went from 18 to 21. It was out of my control. What am I going to do? But what I did do is I went to all the creditors and I refused to go bankrupt. And I said, if you give me time, I'll pay you off. And I could go back there 50 years later, and any of those people were still alive. They'd say, you're the guy that didn't screw us, because that's your reputation. You don't want to screw people over. But there's things out of your control sometimes. And what you do about it shows what you are and who you are. And people will understand, especially if it's, it's not like I was a big drunk. I mean, I'm allergic to alcohol. I didn't drink up all the profits and go out of business. No, I just got knocked out of business because of one legislative pen. All right. But it was out of my control. I had nothing I could do about it but recover. Okay? So you got to come to terms with that. Now, another thing that's interesting that I learned from flying is that, and in business for sure, is some people are in positions they aren't qualified for. Okay. Now, let me give you some sidebars here. Me and the other professional pilots prayed for bad weather. We wanted bad weather. And you say, why on earth, Tom, would you ever want to fly in bad weather? Well, let me give you a little known fact here. All right, this is a little sidebar. Most airports don't have a control tower. Did you know that? Most airports don't have a control tower. And according to the FAA, the United States has 19,482 airports total. You know how many have control towers? 527. That's 2.7% of all airports have a control tower. Many of them, you don't even have to have a radio. But here's the thing. You have to know the rules of every airport you fly. They're written down. Now, there are little grass strips and things like that are around, but you got to know the rules for whatever airport that you're flying into. Well, back to some people are in positions they aren't qualified for. All right. The reason we prayed for bad weather is because all the people at that airport, and there was a lot of them that had little home-built aircraft that was no bigger than your kitchen island, literally, were flying around like little bees buzzing around. Okay. And what I remember this vividly. So I'm flying a heavy twin engine aircraft and I'm on short final. In other words, I'm all configured to land. I'm not supposed to be flying fast and all this and going all over the place, although you're always ready to do what's called a go around. If something happens on the runway, you do what's called a go around. So I'm ready to land. Short final means that you're just almost ready right there. And so so I'm there and I look down the runway and one of these little puddle jumpers comes on the other end of the runway, the wrong end, and is flying and takes off towards me. So I had to do a go around, and then the people on the ground bitched him out pretty bad because he wasn't qualified really. I mean, he got his license, but that's like a license to learn, So he took off the wrong direction and had no idea that a big ass plane was coming right at him. Right. So you have to realize in business, you're going to run into people that are not qualified. There might be nepotism. Their uncle put them in the job. They're arrogant sometimes and they think they know it all, but they don't. So you have to be able to deal with those kinds of things. And like I said, a lot of times it's not life or death, but it could be life or death of your business if you have to deal with one of those people that's holding purse strings. See? So you gotta suck it up and learn how to deal with people that aren't really qualified. Okay. There was another thing I wanted to tell you about. Oh, because I'm in Virginia. I used to fly executives from Pittsburgh Steel, down to Grundy, Virginia. That's here in Virginia where I'm at. But the runway, and like I said, sometimes you have to deal with adverse conditions, and it wasn't weather related this time. But Grundy, Virginia Airport, my wheels would barely fit on this gravel runway, and it's on the top of a mountain, and it also would have made a better golf hole. It had a dog leg in the middle, a curve, it went straight and then it went off about 30 degrees a different direction. You had to really be sharp to land at this airport. And so I did. Got good enough to do that, but I had to deal with those adverse conditions. And then when you took off, the runway was so short, you'd have to take off on the top of this mountain, turn on the dog leg to keep your speed up. The wheels are on the ground, and you'd go off the edge of the mountain, and then you'd have to fly down below the mountain to get your airspeed up enough to pick up to then climb. All right. So you're flying off the edge of a mountain. So you have to get good enough in your business. And this is the way I relate to business. You have to get good enough. And when you're brand new, you might not be good enough. When I was brand new, I wasn't good enough to handle Grundy, Virginia. But as I got more experience and practiced, I could handle more adverse situations in my business and in flying. See? So when you're brand new at something, don't get all arrogant about it or mad at yourself. You have to get the experience. And that's what cracks me up about all these people now. You can't go through Instagram and there's like 3 ads for every piece of a reel, every piece of content. And it's all, I'll make you rich. You'll make 1 million downloads tomorrow. You don't pay. I mean, I'm leaning up against my jet that I don't own. And I mean, just all this crap out there. Don't fall for that. You have to learn and get some experience, and then that's where success comes from. Unless you're a hot babe or something, you can just be out there and get 1 million views and make a lot of money, but most of us aren't. Okay, let's see. When I got my commercial rating, all right, so I could fly passengers for money. So I could fly passengers as a private pilot and a multi-engine pilot and an instrument-rated pilot. Instrument rating means you can fly in bad weather, but you can't get paid with any of those ratings unless you go for a commercial rating. So when I got but the thing is, even if some of you go on some of these tours, helicopter tours or, little airplane tours of the Grand Canyon or something like that. I asked the guy one time, hey, how many hours did you have to get this job? He said, oh, only 500. Well, 500 is a relatively new pilot. I think you can get your commercial at 250, and that particular company could have hired a guy at 250 to fly 18 passengers. All right. So one of my teachers said, Tom, the most important thing about your commercial rating is don't let the passengers know how scared you are. And that was true sometimes as you're coming up as a pilot. So be careful when you're going on some of these little puddle jumpers and make sure the pilot is qualified and experienced. But that's the thing. What he was telling me is you got to stay cool because, and this same thing in business, when things go bad, if you don't stay cool, you can't figure your way out or think your way out. If your mind is all freaked out and fearful, you've got to stay calm, and that'll help you figure a way out of it. The only one of the things I can relate to this is when I went out of the nightclub business because of the drinking age, and then I got hurt, and I was living on credit cards in a vacant building on a mattress. This is around 1988, and I was keeping humor books around me because this was the worst time of my life. I was Mr. Big Shot in the whole state, and then now I'm a nobody living on a credit cards on a mattress in a vacant house. Okay, and so I was watching Candid Camera, and I kept all these humor books around me to keep up and keep my spirits up when I was in this mess. And I'm watching Candid Camera, and that's when I got the idea for Prank Masters, which I got worldwide publicity for, got me on radio and TV all over the world, and kicked off my speaking career. And, but had I just been crying the blues that whole time, then none of that would have happened. I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So that's my commercial rating. Stay cool, even when you don't know how you're going to get out of stuff. And then the last thing is old stuff can be better than new stuff. And some of these airplanes, see, another little known fact is airplanes can last 30, 40, 50 years. Something that they put, I think it's a zinc coating, and they don't rust out. And they have to be maintained every year, no matter whether they fly or not. And all of these, mechanics have to do all this stuff all the time. And so you can have old planes that fly a long time. And they were, a lot of the older planes that I flew were better than the newer ones. And that's another little sidebar story for you. I used to fly commercially to Wichita, Kansas. And Wichita, Kansas is where they make Cessna airplanes. And in those days, they didn't put the navigation radios in, or like the GPS, there was no GPS in the airplanes in those days, or communication radios in the airplanes. You did that at your local airport after the plane was delivered. Well, I'm the delivery boy I'm like the Amazon driver for Cessnas. Okay. So it was a pain in the neck for me to have, I had maps in the plane, but it was just a pain in the neck to be checking the map every 2 seconds of where you are, because you didn't have any navigation stuff in the plane like they do now, and no communication to talk to anybody. So I would ride down Route 70 at about 500 feet above the ground, which is very low, and read the road signs all the way back to Pittsburgh. So even those brand new planes were kind of rickety compared to an older plane. And like the trailers I buy today for my business, I buy a 10-year-old trailer. It's really solid. The metal. You go down to Tractor Supply or Lowe's or whoever sells trailers, there's such dinky little metal on them and crap like that. So old can be better. And like I said, some of those old planes that I'd fly, they were just beautiful. So anyway, this is a little bit different. Gives me a little rambling of the days up in the air, but it was so much fun flying and pretending I'm not scared. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm thinking about going back for my gyrocopter rating, so I've been studying that a little bit now because I'm getting the bug a little bit. That's why I'm doing this episode. I've been watching gyrocopter videos. They're like a Temu helicopter. So anyway, there we go. So check out the screwthecommute.com/publicity for the interview I did with Starley on publicity. But publicity is how I started my career. I got speaking engagements from it, all kinds of sales of products and services from being well known on the airwaves. And then the podcasting masterclass, screwthecommute.com/pod, take really deep notes on that, because that can make you one of the greatest guests the host has ever seen if you do what I tell you on that one. All right. And then, of course, check my mentor program out, greatinternetmarketingtraining.com, and my school, imtcva.org, certified to operate by Chev. All right. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I think I'm going to go watch a gyrocopter video. Catch you later.